Forward. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Secrets to Plant-Based Living Summit, how to use food to have radiant health, mental clarity, and boundless energy. I'm your host, Sandra Cotto, and I've brought together 21 of the most influential doctors, athletes, authors, coaches, to help you understand what plant-based living looks like, what it can do for your health, and how you can transform your life to live more vibrantly. And I'd like to welcome today's guest, Micaela Karlsen. Micaela Karlsen, PhD, is a recognized expert and respected speaker at some of the premier conferences on plant-based nutrition, including the Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference in San Diego, California, and the Plant-Based Prevention of Disease Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina. She is also the author of A Plant-Based Life, a strategic how-to guide for successful plant-based eating. Welcome to the show, Micaela. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about yourself and any recent accomplishments that you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Well, I have eaten a somewhat plant-based diet for about 20 years. I started when I was about 17 and I ate a vegetarian type diet. And I kind of moved into a more vegan diet and then a whole food plant-based diet. And it really happened because I went to Cornell for my undergrad, and that's where Dr. T. Colin Campbell was the faculty. So I got acquainted with his work through being at the school, and then eventually ended up working for him for about 7 years, starting his nonprofit foundation. And then I recently just actually graduated with my PhD in nutritional epidemiology from Tufts University. So I'm really excited to be a researcher. I'm a scientist, and I have a lot of other interests to, help make this information really accessible for people. But I'm really kind of interested in both the nutritional aspects of plant-based nutrition and the health outcomes, as well as behavior change and how people can be really successful.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, congratulations on your recent accomplishment.
Thank you.
That is amazing. A lot of work, I'm sure, went into it. Fantastic. So you said you've been vegan. Well, you went vegetarian about 20 years ago and then transitioned to vegan and whole food plant-based. So what made you decide to do that 20 years ago? Was there someone that influenced you? Was it a movie that you saw? Was it the animals?
I feel like I have some innate interest in being healthier, and I did feel like I was overweight in high school, and I also had some respiratory breathing issues, and I didn't put all the pieces together with the health outcomes in my breathing until later on, but I kind of felt drawn towards eating a healthier diet. So I did try, and a few of my friends are vegetarian, which as we know now from all the research on social support is really essential for maintaining a behavior. So I wanted to give it a try, and I didn't like meat a lot. I did like cheese, so it took me many years to kind of withdraw from eating cheese. But I felt like drawn to nutrition in some way and being healthy. And then as I learned more about what the possibilities are for plant-based diets, whole food plant-based diets, I realized that I could take care of a lot of my allergies and even at one point a diagnosis of asthma by avoiding dairy and avoiding sugar. And I'm really happy that I stuck with it because, I feel really comfortable and I'm not congested, and, quality of life I think would be very different for me if I hadn't chosen this path.
Wow, Micaela, well, my story is similar as far as, the allergies and the asthma, because that's something that I had suffered from for many, many, many years. And when I went to a plant-based diet, went vegan, it was a huge, huge change. I was actually able to smell and taste my food. I mean, I was literally on 4 medications a day. I had my, my rescue inhaler, my regular my maintenance inhaler. I had allergy medicines, and I was also very big into running and doing half marathons, and I wouldn't go to any of those races without having my inhaler. And just the change in my food made a huge difference, where now I can run races and do things and not have to have an inhaler. I actually don't even use a maintenance inhaler on a daily basis anymore because of that. And so that for me was a huge, huge wake up, like, wow, the power of food, right? And the power of plants and what they can do to help, clear up some of your issues. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
that's
now
great.
you're just not having to deal with any of the asthma and allergies like you did back then.
Mm-hmm. That's no, yeah, exactly. I can breathe. I used to only be able to breathe through my mouth, and my lips are always dry, and it's not, that's gone. So I'm really grateful for the the benefits of plant-based eating. I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, I totally agree because of how I felt, it actually shifted my career, my second career now as a plant-based, eating health coach. And it all started with Dr. Campbell's plant-based nutrition course that I graduated from
Oh, wonderful.
in 2016. Yes, I knew that we had that in common.
Great.
That was really the
Yeah.
start of everything for me. I thought, you know what, I could really do something with this and really get the word out and help other people who may be going through some of the same health issues, that eating this way can really, really improve your health tremendously and actually eliminate a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these medications, right? All through just eating food. All right,
Yeah.
great. So I know you mentioned vegan and then whole food plant-based. So tell us a little bit about those two terms versus vegan. I know some people say, well, I don't like to say I'm vegan because I'm really whole food plant-based, or they say, no, I'm whole food plant-based, but vice versa. How are the two terms used, or what would be your definition of the two terms?
Well, so I'll give you my history with both of them. It's evolved a little bit. Um, I think traditionally vegan refers to just excluding animal products, but it might include eating some processed food or some more like sugar and oil or maybe some junk food. And whole food plant-based refers to a really whole food diet with no animal products, but also really trying to avoid or minimize the junk food and the added oil and the sugar and maybe the salt. So that's, a healthier kind of goal. But I have tended to go for the language of whole food plant-based and plant-based diets just because I worked closely with Dr. Campbell for a number of years. And as a researcher, his kind of preference for the flavor of that term plant-based kind of rubbed off on me. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's a little bit friendlier for people who are not familiar with all this information, especially researchers who are looking at the health benefits or risks of certain foods or diets. And it's a little bit more like descriptive, and it's a little bit more inclusive. But I would say in a research context, it often doesn't mean a diet that excludes all animal foods. Like research is kind of getting excited about these concepts. And there are now a lot of research papers that are published that just say vegan. And I think it's maybe a little more clear cut. So I used to be really strongly in the camp of not saying vegan and saying plant-based or whole food plant-based. And now I don't feel so strongly about either one. I think either one of them can work. I think it's a little more clear if you say whole food plant-based that you're really talking about a diet for health and trying to avoid the processed food. But there are a lot of vegans that eat a really healthy diet. And whatever everyone's reasons are, cutting out the animal foods and eating some more fruits and vegetables is a big step forward for where most people are. So I kind of think there are pros and cons to both words. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I bet you're talking to a lot of people that, maybe use both of them or one or the other.
Yes. I actually had an expert who liked to refer to vegan versus whole food plant-based. And I know that sometimes both of those terms are kind of used interchangeably. And sometimes people get a little bit confused, or they think, oh, well, you're vegan and so you must be healthy. But there, like you mentioned, there's a lot of other processed foods that are out there. I mean, you can eat, I believe it's Oreo cookies and still be vegan, and it may not necessarily be a whole food, right? Plant-based, it's still something that is processed. But yeah, I really like to focus on a whole food plant-based diet myself, right? Eating, foods from the earth in its natural form to get the most, nutrients from it. And I tend to really like to eat a lot of raw, but I also eat a lot of cooked as well. But I love my salads. And what's really great is once you transition to this lifestyle and you start eating more whole foods, and you could really taste, the difference between, even different lettuces or different types of apples, because your palate gets a lot cleaner, right? And when you're eating all of these processed foods, you don't really get to have the full taste of these delicious foods. And going plant-based, there's so many fruits and vegetables out there to explore that sometimes people on a normal diet, or what we call the standard American diet, don't have the opportunity to taste all these wonderful fruits and vegetables that are really available for us because of all these other foods that are crowding it out.
Yeah, it's definitely not a limited diet or a limited palate once you start experimenting with all the options.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what are some tips that you can give for eating plant-based on a budget? Because some people say, it's really expensive to go plant-based. Do I buy organic, not organic? What would you suggest? Or what would be some tips?
Definitely. So I would say, first of all, the things that are the most expensive are the replacements for meat and cheese, like animal foods. So if you're on a budget, I would really not try to replicate your meat-based or meat-inclusive diet by buying substitutes, because that's where you really start to spend a lot of money. Just sticking with simple ingredients like rice and beans, vegetables that are in season. There are a lot of CSAs, community-supported agriculture farms, and there's even actually I think on our website, we have a link to look up a CSA based on your zip code. So there's a lot all around the country, and a lot of them actually for even people who are on really limited incomes, they even have programs to help people who are on low income budgets to get CSA shares. So that's something to investigate in your area, especially it's often through the cooperative extension. So it's something to check out. The other thing is, don't worry about buying organic if you're on a super budget. Organic is definitely better for the environment, and it's probably better for people too, but we don't really have a lot of evidence showing that organic, the fact that the food is organic, is going to give you a bigger bang for your buck than just eating vegetables and avoiding animal food. So really where the research is right now, it looks like you gain a lot of nutritional benefits from just cutting out the meat and cheese and milk and focusing on fruits and vegetables and legumes and whole grains. And then if you can buy some organic food, but not all organic food, check out the Dirty Dozen list. That's the list of organic stuff that is probably most important produce that's most important to try to get organic if you can. But if you can't, don't worry about it and don't stress. And in a lot of places in the country, there may not be really great options for grocery stores for everyone, but actually Walmart is expanding and they have grocery sections. Yeah. And for many people on very limited budgets, this is a great thing because they're finally getting fresh groceries and they really have a lot of stuff. So I would just say, focus on the simple foods, look for recipes that look interesting to you. And there's always time for special occasions to buy some of these almond cream cheese or other meat substitutes for these treats. But, really that stuff you don't need it to eat a healthy diet anyway. What you need is lots of greens and lots of whole grains and legumes and, eating some nuts and seeds, but not a lot. When people stop buying oil, it saves a lot of money because oil is expensive and you don't need it anyway. If you have heart disease, it's probably better not to eat it at all. So there are a lot of ways that it can be really affordable. And actually, even the research shows that a healthy diet does not have to be more expensive than a more conventional diet. And that's not even a completely vegan diet that we're talking about. So I think it's maybe a perception because people see the prices of certain vegetables or certain fruits in the grocery store, and they think, oh, I have to buy this huge collection of produce to have on hand all the time. But if you kind of stick to the basics, and another thing is frozen fruits and vegetables are it's a huge help, and they're actually really nutrient dense because they're flash frozen right at the point of picking. So sometimes they're even better than fresh stuff that's been sitting and oxidizing for a few weeks in transit. And also research shows that people who eat frozen fruits and vegetables actually eat more fruits and vegetables than people who don't rely on them, because it's just so easy to open a bag of frozen broccoli and throw it in whatever you're making. So maybe if you're going from eating pasta for dinner to eating pasta with broccoli, that is a really positive step. And buying a bag of frozen broccoli is really inexpensive.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's one of the tips that I give to some of my clients as well, is that frozen sometimes, like you said, can be a lot better because it is picked at its, at the peak, and it's frozen right away, where, like you said, some of these other products, they're coming in from, across the country, and you don't know how long it's been sitting in the truck. So those are really great tips, right? Just starting, one meal at a time, substituting, adding more vegetables and not to worry so much about buying everything organic. And you can find the list of the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen on the EWG website, Environmental Working Group website, where you can actually print that up. And I believe they update it every year, so you can kind of, you know, cut it out and put it in your wallet and take it with you to the supermarket. So, and buying, like you said, locally, I think helps a lot too with the, you know, with the staying on track in your budget. And another thing is, you know, people sometimes don't relate that, you know, do you want to pay now or do you want to pay later? I mean, your health, you cannot put a dollar amount on your health. And, you know, eating healthy now is just going to help you propel to live a more vibrant life and live longer and have a quality of life, right, as we're, you know, getting older. Thank you for those tips. So what about, you know, some questions that I get, people ask, you know, well, do you need any supplements, you know, when you're on a vegan or whole food plant-based diet? What is your take on supplements?
My take on supplements is we have substantial data now that taking a multivitamin over the long term may not be a good idea, and it may increase your risk for certain chronic diseases. But we do have plenty of evidence that people who eat no animal products at all must take a B12 supplement, because they're not going to get B12 probably in sufficient quantities. There is B12 is added as B12. Many foods are fortified with B12 that are semi-processed. So that might include some breakfast cereal and maybe some other processed snacks. But if you're not eating a lot of that stuff and you're just eating whole fruits and vegetables and, you know, grains, legumes, etc., you definitely need a B12 supplement. B12 is water soluble, so it's not really a problem if you take more than you need. It'll just be excreted in the urine. So that's a really important thing for people to remember. And I think most people who eat a vegan diet or plant-based diet are aware of that, but it is really important to take it. I always ask my doctor every year to test my B12 levels and my vitamin D levels to see where I'm at. And at one point in the past, I did start to get a few symptoms of B12 deficiency, which includes like tingling in the extremities, so my fingers. That was a long time ago. And I have been much more vigilant about taking B12 supplements since that time. The other supplement people may need to take is vitamin D, but taking supplements is really similar to taking medication. So I really don't think it's really better to plan to take supplements in consultation with your physician, and also in the context of knowing like what the rest of your diet is and what your blood levels are, because if you don't need, vitamin D is a hormone that's created in the skin when you're exposed to UVB sunlight. So if you are getting sufficient sunlight exposure, and sufficient sunlight exposure will vary depending on your skin color, the altitude you live at, and what time of year it is, and the weather. But if you're getting enough sunlight, you really don't need a vitamin D supplement. If you're not, you can end up with quite low levels. So that's a personal decision that people really should talk to their doctor about.
Okay.
But as far as multivitamins, I would stay away from them.
You would stay away from them. Okay, so just a B12, vitamin D, again, depending on what your physician says when you get tested for your blood work each year. Yeah, I know that.
And I mean, with any single nutrient supplement or any supplement, it's always should be a decision made in the context of your medical practitioner. So there are some people maybe who have really severe illnesses, or they have special medical conditions and they do need other supplements, but those like situations really are unusual, and anyway, those decisions should be made with a physician.
And so in terms of the supplement for B12, is there a specific quality of B12 you want to get? Does it, I mean, I know there's so many different supplements out there on the market today. Like, how do you know you're getting a good B12? I mean, should it be liquid form, pill form? What would you suggest for people if they're looking for a good B12, what to look for?
I don't think it matters. Okay. I think you could go to a grocery store. If you have like a health food store near you, you could go to a health food store. You could go to a regular grocery store. And if you prefer liquid or not, you can pick what you want. I think the way you can tell is when you get your B12 levels tested, and if they're adequate, then you know everything is fine.
Okay, great. All right. What's the best way to approach making a change to plant-based eating and be successful at it at the same time? Because some people will say, I've talked to people who said, yeah, well, I was vegan for 3 months and it just didn't work for me and I went back to eating meat. So what kind of tips could you give with, trying it out and really being successful with it?
Yeah, well, I love this topic because this is the subject of my book. I felt like I wrote the book because I needed to read this book, and
Mm.
I can relate to so many people who made the transition very, very gradually. Like my own transition was not overnight, and I admire people that make an overnight transition because, of
Right.
course, you get a lot of immediate feedback by feeling better. But for me, it took me many years to get to where I am now with my eating, and I think that's fine, and I think that's how it happens for a lot of people. But one thing I can say from the research that we have on behavior change and willpower, especially, and there's a great book called Willpower written by Roy Baumeister, who is a researcher. He's a social psychologist from the University of Florida, and he
Ah,
has amazing research on willpower. I love his work. He's not plant-based himself, and he's not a nutritionist, but the information is very applicable to plant-based diets. So what he's found is that willpower is sort of a finite resource that we have internal stores of, and it can get depleted in the short term. And that happens when we're tired, when we've been thinking hard or made a lot of decisions, when
mm,
we're hungry, or when we're like emotionally tired. So when that happens, your willpower goes down and your impulsiveness goes up,
mm.
and the sensation and the reward experience of craving also goes up. So at the times when we're like tired and hungry, that's the most likely time when we're going to break down and eat a brownie that we didn't really want to eat. And that's also the time when the brownie is going to taste the best to us. So if you're like not hungry, you're well rested, and you're feeling pretty calm, and you eat a brownie, it's just not going to be as rewarding as if you're hungry, tired, and in a craving, unfortunately.
Right.
So anyway, and he found that like his theory is that willpower is really not a capacity that is supposed to be used to stop ourselves from eating too much. But that's what we're using it for in the modern food environment. So my suggestion for everyone is try to minimize the number of food decisions that you make in your life throughout the day. And a lot of people talk about getting the food out of your, like the unhealthy food out of your kitchen, out of your house, get it out of your office, talk to your coworkers, see if they'll stop bringing in the M&Ms, then we could have like different like nuts or something in the office. All kinds of things like planning your route on the way to work from your home, and like pre-planning where you're going to stop and what you're going to buy if you get hungry and you're stuck in traffic, so that you don't just end up buying a slice of pizza because you're craving it. All of this planning and kind of pre-deciding and grooming your environment so that it's really supportive of your goals can help people minimize the number of decisions they have to make each day. And really like setting everything up on autopilot and minimizing decisions is the key to maintaining your willpower, so that when you are in a situation where you really need to use it, it's still there for you. Like if you go through your whole day, you go to work, you go to a party after work, you've had a long day and you've had to say no to cookies at work, and you had to say no to something else in your house because
Right.
your spouse was offering it to you, all this stuff. Then when you get to the party, you're tired and you're just going to eat whatever's there. Whereas if you are really well rested and you've been eating healthy all day long, and you didn't really encounter a lot of food that you had to say no to, or we know that as you eat this way longer, the cravings like pull you less and less because your tastes change. But
Right.
especially in the beginning, it's really important to try to minimize the decisions and just set everything up so that you have very few decisions, and the decisions that you have are compatible with what your goals are.
Great. Right. So just a little bit of planning ahead of time, right? I know the office scene can be very challenging for a lot of people because they bring in pizzas and donuts in the morning. And I know for me, I bring my own. If I know they're having breakfast at the office, then I'm bringing my own snacks with me, and everybody already knows. So, and I'll bring an additional for everybody else to try as well, right? So that we're not starting our day with so much
Yeah.
sugar and starting out with something a little bit more healthy. All
Yeah.
right, great. And so out of everything that we talked about today, what would be the one thing that you would like the listeners to get out of today's interview? Or what could be one last thing that you'd like to tell everybody about a plant-based diet and transitioning?
I mean, I think I would just like them to know that the possibilities are amazing. You can feel better than you've ever felt. You can have clear thinking and good sustained energy throughout the day, as well as potentially reverse a number of health conditions depending on your situation. So it's really worth giving it a try 100% for 3 weeks, see how it goes. And then I think that it takes years to really transition to a completely permanent lifestyle that's really, really healthy. So I just want people to know that if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that's totally fine and that's really human, and you're still going to get there, and it's not a problem. Like, just keep going forward. If you go backwards sometimes, it's totally okay. So that's my message. Like, there's room for everyone to go at their own pace. If we're all going in the same direction, we can all support each other, and we don't have to be like going at the same speed to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everybody has their own journey, right? And you have to kind of listen to your body, see what works. And the good thing about when you transition over and you try all these different foods, you really kind of get a little bit more in tune with your body to see how it's reacting to some of these things. So yeah, it's okay to give yourself a little bit of a break if you do mess up, right? Tomorrow's a new day. You can always start again the next day. And it's basically trial and error and see how you feel, and keep moving forward. And, maybe getting some support as well, from others that have lived this lifestyle or are currently living this lifestyle, and getting a little support that way. All right,
Definitely.
great. So I have one last question for you. It's a question I've been asking all my experts. If you were on a deserted island and you could only bring one fruit and one vegetable with you, what would those be?
So this question is hard for me because I don't want to give the impression that I'm assigning greater value to one food or another, nutritionally speaking.
Right.
If I were thinking about my pleasure and what fruit I most enjoy eating, it's grapes, but I wouldn't say that's the most nutritionally dense fruit.
Right.
I guess I would maybe bring bananas and nori seaweed.
Ah, I love it. Nori, seaweed, and bananas.
I
Great.
don't know. It's hard. Don't take that as my final say. Don't tell me what I said that either. I don't know.
I know, it's a hard one. It was hard for me too. I love all fruits and veggies, but I love cherries, one of my favorites, and I love spinach. So those would be my two things. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for all of your insight. And so, Micaela, I know you have a really great gift that everyone is going to have access to. You will be able to have access to that on today's show. It is the plant-based starter kit. So can you tell us a little bit about this amazing free gift?
Sure. We have, so I'm really excited to share this with people, especially for people starting for the first time, or even people that just want some tips to go to the next level. We have recipes for a week for a family of 4, meal plan. We have tips for being social, a recommended reading list of must-have books and movies, all kinds of shopping and snack ideas. And we also have a preview to our plant-based nutrition support program from Sustainable Diet. So there's a little video and some good content there. And our mission is to help people transition successfully to plant-based eating. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
That sounds fantastic. That is a great way for people to get started. I mean, what better way than to get a whole kit that's going to give you some direction on how to go, and maybe get the whole family involved, right? So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for that gift. Well, thank you again, Micaela, for being on the show today. Thank you to everyone listening here today. Micaela, let me ask you, where can everybody find you if they were to go online? You have your website?
Oh, sure.
Which we'll put in the link as well.
Okay, yeah. So my website is micaelakarlsen.com.
Okay.
And I'm also the founder of plantbasedresearch.org, which is now part of the Plantrition Project. And I work with them to maintain the website. So that's there. And then our program and the free gift is at sustainablediet.com.
Okay, great. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. And don't forget to continue watching to hear more of all of our experts here that are going to give you some insight so that you can transform your life to live more vibrantly. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you.